All right, so here I am talking with Aaron Lakof, who's with uh, Independent Jewish Voices Canada. Aaron, you're a new man at Independent Jewish Voices Canada.
Yeah, I just started with them in November. So I've been a longtime supporter. It's really nice to kind of come on board now as the communications and media lead.
That's and that is that a full-time job, Aaron?
It's full time, yeah. And it's
All right.
sometimes there's a lot of overtime too. We get really busy and caught up in these campaigns, but it's really exciting work now too.
Well, I'm glad you're finding enough to do. That's great. Um, Aaron, I wanted to talk to you today a bit about the IHRA definition and the campaign that Independent Jewish Voices Canada has been leading, successful campaign to encourage Canadian municipalities to refrain from adopting this resolution. Maybe you can just summarize for me what those successes have been.
Yeah, so we've had quite a bit of success so far on the municipal level in terms of countering this push. And this push is a very concerted effort from the pro-Israel lobby in Canada, specifically with CIJA and B'nai B'rith, to get all levels of government to adopt the IHRA's redefinition of anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, it was adopted at the federal level last June by Heritage Canada as part of the federal government's anti-racism strategy. But on the municipal level, there's of course 3 cities now, Montreal being the most recent, where we've managed to get it blocked. And I think that speaks to the fact that, in a lot of ways, we as IJV have a very engaged local grassroots membership in different cities across the country, including some cities. Calgary isn't necessarily known as a city with a huge activist milieu or a huge social justice milieu, but we do have members who are on the ground in Calgary who have those relationships with their city councilors where they can pick up the phone and call and talk to people and push and agitate so that there is a broad understanding of what the IHRA represents.
Maybe I can just leap in there. So, in case people don't know, the IHRA is a definition of anti-Semitism. But what was wrong with the old definition? They say that there needs to be a better definition. What's their argument?
Well, I think the argument stems from the fact that in the last 2 decades, especially since the growth of the BDS movement, the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement, I think the momentum of that movement really took pro-Israel groups kind of by surprise. They did not expect there to be such an outpouring of support and growth for that movement. And of course, Israel's relentless attacks on the Gaza Strip have only helped to shift global sympathy towards the Palestinian people over the last 2 decades. And so I think that they were trying to grapple with, well, how do we counter this growing Palestine solidarity movement? And unfortunately, one of the few tricks up their sleeve is let's redefine anti-Semitism. And so, before the IHRA was being passed, we would hear this term, the new anti-Semitism, being thrown around. And what the new anti-Semitism simply refers to is anti-Zionism, right? Jared Kushner, actually, interestingly enough, in December, when Trump passed an executive order which enshrined the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism into law, Jared Kushner said very explicitly that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Mm-hmm. So that's very dangerous. This is essentially what we're trying to counter with the IHRA, because the Jewish community has never had a consensus on Zionism. Of course, this is an age-old debate. As long as Zionism has existed in the Jewish diaspora, there's always been debate and discord around it. And essentially what I think we're trying to do with this campaign against the IHRA is to preserve that sense of, or that tradition rather, of debate within our community, of democratic debate around these issues, because we, at the end of the day, believe in human rights for the Palestinian people. We believe those human rights should be fought for, and debate around it is a healthy thing. It's part of our democracy. But what the IHRA is trying to do is trying to silence and limit that debate by saying, for example, if you call Israel a racist state, that is anti-Semitic, which we wholeheartedly believe that it isn't.
So if I understand, Aaron, there is a definition which probably is not all that problematic, and then there's a whole bunch of examples which the impact of which is to associate criticisms of Israel with the notion of anti-Semitism. Is that a correct
Exactly.
characterization?
So the definition itself is fairly innocuous. It's just one paragraph. Actually, in our critique of the whole working definition of anti-Semitism of the IHRA, we actually say that their definition is actually pretty toothless. One thing that it says, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it says anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews that can sometimes be negative. And what we're trying to say is, well, no, this is actually a serious problem. It is a dangerous form of bigotry that often results in death or serious bodily harm. And we need strong tools to combat it. But in any case, in the first paragraph of their working definition, the IHRA's definition, fairly toothless, and it's pretty nuanced as well too, because they do say that criticism of Israel isn't always anti-Semitic. So we can all agree on that, fine. But then, yes, of course, like, the devil is in the details, as they say. If you look into their list of 11 examples of anti-Semitism, 7 of those 11 touch on Israel. Now, again, some of them we would agree with, that for sure what they're describing is anti-Semitism. When you talk about Israel and you bring up references to blood libel, or when you make, these kind of dangerous comparisons with Nazi Germany, right? Like that can definitely snowball into anti-Semitism. But one of the things that we really take issue with is they're saying that to essentially to denounce or to question the Jewish people's right to self-determination or to call Israel a racist state is anti-Semitic. And that's really dangerous, again, because when we talk about Jewish self-determination, there are many, many different opinions about what that is and what that represents, right? Zionists see Jewish self-determination as setting up a state for the Jewish people in Palestine, right? Others would disagree. Others would see a form of self-determination as fighting anti-Semitism within the diaspora. And so, again, it's all this debate and nuance that needs to be preserved, and we feel that bringing in the IHRA's definition of anti-Semitism can only serve to chill the debate or to close down the debate.
Okay, so this definition was brought to these various city councils by Jewish Zionist lobby groups, CJ or B'nai B'rith, or some combination thereof, and the city councils had to consider it. Why did they pause? Like, why did the various city councils say, just a minute here, we're not going to go ahead with this? What were the pressures on them? Who were your allies?
So I think a significant factor is the fact that it's Jews themselves who are coming forward and saying, hold on a minute, this is a controversial debate within the Jewish community. The IHRA is bringing up a significant amount of controversy. And so I think for non-Jewish counselors, when they see Jews coming forward, Jewish members of IJV, they see that and they say, okay, this is not, we have far from a consensus within the Jewish community. So I think that's a really significant factor. And we certainly saw that work in Montreal. I mean, I myself was one of 3 IJV members who got up in front of city council to ask a critical question about the IHRA, and we were really well received. I mean, it was interesting. There was a whole viewing gallery at City Hall. Lots of people who were there for all sorts of different issues, not necessarily the IHRA, but when we asked our questions, the whole viewing gallery was applauding because, again, there's just this overall general sympathetic feeling towards Palestine, especially within Quebec. Quebec society tends to be a little bit more pro-Palestinian than the other provinces, I would say. So I think it's that lobbying effort and just really showing that, again, this is not an easy issue within the Jewish community, and this is not something where there's going to be an easy consensus around.
Okay. Aaron, I don't want to challenge you on this, but would you not say it's true that within the Montreal, or when the Canadian Jewish community, that the notion of Zionism, that is to say the notion of a Jewish state, while it may not be unanimous, it's got a pretty high support rate in the Jewish community. That's certainly my impression. Maybe you have a different one.
I mean, I think that's shifting. I think that we might have seen that over the years, but IJV did an opinion poll in the last year where we polled, sampling of Canadian Jews, and we're seeing that opinion is starting to shift away from, let's say, blanket support of Israel. And you see this a lot with younger people too, who over the years are simply finding it harder and harder to just stand by Israel in the face of all the ongoing atrocities, the blockade of Gaza, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And then, even within people who support the state of Israel, I mean, there's a whole range and, nuance of opinions there, right? Like maybe we can support the state of Israel, but again, at the end of the day, we have to be able to call a spade. And if Israel is carrying out racist policies and racist attacks against Palestinians, we have to be able to say that Israeli state policy is racist. And again, that is something the IHRA is going to classify as anti-Semitic.
Anti-Semitic, right? Aaron, I'm starting to run out of time here. Sure. I could go on for quite a while, but is this battle over? For example, in Montreal, do you think that it's going to come up again? How are you preparing for that? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think we want a decisive victory, but I wouldn't say it's over because, as we know, the pro-Israel lobby are strong. They are able to mobilize their membership, and we saw them do that after the vote in Montreal. We saw them flood Valérie Plante's office with emails. And actually, I shouldn't say flood because I couldn't say how many emails they've gotten, but we were trying to do the same thing as well. We were trying to counter that message by getting our constituency to send thank you emails to city councillors. But, we're not going to rest on our laurels. This is definitely going to come up in other cities, no doubt about that. And then we know it's going to come up at the provincial levels too. Ontario already has a private members bill that was tabled, could very well start to come up in other provinces too. So what we're hoping to kind of do is we have a model that works now. We want to try exporting that model to other cities and other provinces. Because again, I think what the pro-Israel lobby would essentially want to do is kind of foreclose the debate, just bring it out of the public sphere. And we really want to bring this into the public sphere because it is an important, social debate and social conversation to be having.
Well, Aaron Lakof, looks like you've got quite a few things to do. Thank you very much for spending some time with Canada Talks Israel-Palestine. We'll watch carefully what happens in other cities or what happens in Montreal again. Or, it'll be an interesting debate. And I think it's clearly debate is unfolding in Canada. So thank you very much. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
Okay.
Great. So are you going to